Well, I figured it was about time to record some of my work in progress on my aquaponics setup. So I guess this is where I'll start. This is a 100-gallon tank that will be where the fish will reside. You'll notice there are a couple tubes coming back here. The upper one is the return, which will bring water back that's already been cycled through the plants. And then the one that sticks out the side there will be overflow. So that will be the top level of the water, and the water will stay at a constant level right there. So anything that any changes will actually happen in this up here, which is my sump tank. So I'll kind of walk through the system, but let's just say we're overflowing a little water into our sump tank in here. This is where there's going to be a variance of water levels. That's a 55-gallon drum that I recessed into the ground, and down at the bottom is the pump. And so we'll start that pretty full, but it will kind of cycle through different levels depending on the ebb and flow of one of the beds that I'm using. So you can see that the pump feeds out through the wall over here, and this is a filter that my son and I made. I'd actually acquired some aquaponic gear from a guy that I bought the fish tank from, and we basically kind of stole his model and sort of made our own from it. He had a real good idea for stuffing that with a sponge in one end and then some synthetic pillow stuffing material, and that way you can open up the end cap and replace that material. And what that does is just kind of gets out the big chunks of things, and I don't know how often we'll have to change that, but we will. So that line comes over here to this system here. So what you'll see is this bigger tube right here is the return that goes back over to the tank. And what I've done on this is I've got a valve right here. So if I actually shut off the flow of the water up where the plants are, I've got some other valves, I can open that valve right there, and it will just flow right back through there up in a closed loop back to the fish tank. But if you follow the one here on the left, this actually goes up to where the beds are going to be. And so I've got these exposed right now, but they'll be buried later. So that inlet line comes over to here, and you can see that it comes over to these three. And so these will be constant flow beds right in here, with water coming out the other end. I've got return lines on the other end, and each one of these have a valve that I can set and change the flow of water. The other direction it splits over here, it comes up to these two beds. The one on the right is going to be an ebb and flow bed. It's got a bell siphon which allows it to fill up, and then it will drain, and then it will fill up, and then it will drain, and I'm going to try to get that in about half-hour cycles. So the one over here on the left will be a constant level, and that's going to be a raft system where I'm going to use something like a yoga mat or something and float it on top of the fluid, and then cut holes in the mat to recess plants in that will be sitting in constant water. So the return then comes out the bottom. You can see the pipe coming out of that one over there and that one over here, and they join and go down to the ground and back across. And then these systems over here, the outlets come out this end of these three, and then drops down, and then my return goes all the way back to the fish, and that's the cycle. Hi there, just wanted to give an update on my aquaponics garden. This is my second video. If you have seen the first one, you saw how I had the system laid out to be plumbed. Still working through finishing that off as far as gluing some of the joints. I should be done with that probably tonight. But I wanted to throw a video up of an addition that I made here just yesterday. One of my concerns with having my tank out here was just stuff falling into my fish tank, or we have a lot of neighborhood cats, you know, cats getting in there and messing with the fish. So I wanted to make some kind of a cover over it, but I didn't want to make it where it was too cumbersome, where my kids couldn't come out here and feed the fish easily, and where we could still see the fish. So I came up with this idea, which I have built, and it lays over the lip of my tank. And all that is just some window screen material that's on top of it. And then I've got a hinged area here, which I can lift up, and you can get to the corner of the tank to feed the fish, or to get a little bit closer look, or get your hands in there for some reason. So I think that'll work out real well. It'll keep off the debris. If you can, I don't even know if it'll come through on here, but I've got all sorts of junk that's down inside my tub right now from the rain the past few days. There's a weeping willow tree right over this tank, and much of the weeping willow is now inside that tank. So I'm kind of wishing I had done this a week ago, but nonetheless, it's done, and I think it's going to work out real well. The return line is going to come back and just drop right through that screen, and you know, I think it will also help sort of, you know, if there's any big particles that end up coming back down the return line, they'll end up, you know, sitting on top of that screen. Plus, you know, I guess it should, in theory, aerate the water a little bit more as it kind of passes through the screen too. So I think it's kind of a good design. We'll see how it plays out, but kind of feel good about the way it turned out. If you have any recommendations or suggestions, feel free to leave them in a comment. Hey, I just wanted to do a video. I haven't done one for a while, and haven't done one since I got my fish. In fact, you can probably see them scooting around down in there a little bit. So about 2 weeks ago, I went out to Frank's Aquaponics, which you can find at franksaquaponics.com, and picked up 23 tilapia from him, and the transfer to this tank was really successful. I didn't lose any of them, and they've been eating like crazy and doing their thing, and it seems like they made the transition well. So from the last time I posted a video, I've changed the system just a little bit. If you watched the earlier ones, you saw that I ran water through that filter right there. You know, it came up out of the sump tank and into that filter and on up to the garden up there. I found that that was restricting the water flow a little bit too much, and I wasn't getting enough pressure at the heads where the garden was. So I changed it a little bit and decided to do a kind of passive filter here. So as water comes out of the top of this tank and comes back down into the sump tank, it goes down through this bucket system. And what I did is I took a 4-gallon bucket and drilled a bunch of holes in it. And on the inside of it, I have a 4-inch PVC pipe that goes down into a cap at the bottom, and it has holes drilled in it. And then it just has pillow stuffing material all the way around that gets out the kind of solid waste and keeps it from getting back down into the sump tank and going through my pump on the way back out. And that seemed to work considerably better. I got crazy flow now, almost too much of. You know, I find that my ebb and flow bed is cycling about every 5 minutes, and I don't know if that's perhaps too fast, but I have a hard time slowing it down more than that. So I may have to kind of throttle it in there with another ball valve or something to cut it back just a little bit. Anyway, so let me step over this part of the garden. Things are going well up on this system as far as mechanically speaking. Everything is flowing like it should. I have had considerable problems with my ebb and flow, with my germination. I got sidetracked looking at my ebb and flow. But I put a bunch of seeds in, and very few things have actually popped. I've had some lima beans pop, and they've come up. I've had a summer squash pop. And you know what, while I'm right here, you can see this is the ebb and flow bell siphon, and it's just reached the top, and you're going to see this thing flush out in just a minute. So excuse the ADD video, but since I'm here and you're about to watch it dump, I guess might as well. So you can see it's up to about the top, and right now this water is going to start dropping. I don't know if you can see that well enough. I hope so. And it's actually draining all the way out now. And on the other end, since we're in the middle of this, you can see how much more active the drain gets down here when it starts dumping. And it creates so much movement in the system, and you know, tons of aeration in the water. But that works really well. I had to go to a little bit bigger drain. So I found that I was having a hard time even keeping up with that flow of water. But anyway, back to where I was. So, you know, I planted a bunch of stuff, and this is right now May 18th. I planted a bunch of this on May 1st, and so you know, I had some eggplant that I put in back here, more summer squash here, a whole bunch of the lima beans. I've got another one that looks like it's going to do something here in a minute, but another one here that's kind of working his way up. But I really haven't seen very much pop up. I had a cucumber pop up, and it died. So, you know, a little bit discouraged about the way that that's happened. I planted a bunch of spinach, both in these here, in my raft bed, and a bunch of spinach all in these tubes here. And none of those have popped. I kind of wonder if perhaps they're too submerged and they're just too wet. So I'm trying something a little bit different with some onions that I planted. And rather than having them sit down actually in the water, they're kind of touching the water, and it's wicking up and keeping those wool cubes moist, but not completely saturated. So I'm going to see if I have any different success with that. One thing that was pretty successful so far are my Swiss chard that I planted. Those little guys have popped up and are starting to do their thing, and so I'm pretty pleased with that. Today I just took a few cuttings that are not looking very happy about being cut, but actually took these out of the dirt garden. That's a little bit of a mint and some can't think of the name, I'll come back to it, and strawberry as well. So anyway, that's it. Things are kind of going. Obviously I'm not bearing any fruit, but I also have a lot to learn when it comes to actually, you know, the gardening aspect of this. So you know, hopefully by the next time I post a video, I've got a little bit more life out here. If you happen to see anything that you just go, oh, you dummy, this is why you're not seeing better germination, tell me. I'm open to constructive criticism. I'm by no means an expert on this. I have put this together based on watching lots of YouTube videos and doing lots of reading, but you know, I'm certainly not an authority, and I'm kind of, there's a lot of trial by fire here. So anyway, if you have anything to say, feel free to leave me a comment on the YouTube video, and perhaps I can learn from you. Thanks.